I was a teenager when I first visited Hawaii Volcanoes National Park with my father in 1960. The Kapoho and Kilauea eruptions, with their spectacular fountains, had just ended. I remember climbing around steaming vents and hiking across fresh lava fields. I have been photographing here ever since, first in stills and then later in video as well. The current eruption of Kilauea began on January 3rd, 1983. At our house in the town of Volcano, some 9 miles away, we could easily hear the roar and feel a gentle vibration. At night, residents and visitors would watch these beautiful fountains from several locations. Geologists from the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory constantly monitored the eruption, and photographers like myself, Jim Griggs, Dorian Wiesel, and others worked with them or hiked out on our own to photograph and to just be there. Geologists Ed Wolf and Dick Moore are picking their way through a hostile landscape to collect samples and measure the temperature of the lava. This environment is an ever-changing mixture of swirling dust, volcanic fumes, smoke, hot shifting winds, and drifting tephra. There is a constant, loud, low, earth-trembling roar. The terrain is mostly cinder-covered, replete with burning trees, jumbled old aa fields, and searing hot flows. Whenever I get this close to high fountains, I become extremely aware of the slightest changes in wind, sound, ground tremor, and radiant heat. I feel a mixture of awe, exhilaration, and terror. A change in the shape of the vent opening or a shift in the wind could leave any of us in an anoxic environment or under a deadly shower of glowing tephra and molten spatter. These flows out near the vent are really big and very fast moving. USGS photographer Jim Griggs photographs and describes what happens when they break out of their channels.
The flow coming from the tube has essentially stopped. We gotta get out of here. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Come on.
You want to take this?
No. Hey, Bert. Get out of here. You can leave it. Yeah.
Back about 150 meters.
We've moved back about 150 meters to the northeast of the position where we were with the time-lapse camera. When the flow through the tube stopped, it broke over the top in a very large volume.
I believe that there is no experience comparable to being in a forest at night when an aa flow is coming through. We are in Royal Gardens subdivision on a fairly steep slope, and the flow is surging through a dense stand of tall ohia trees. The swiftly moving lava is covering trees even before they can burn. Steam escaping from their trunks adds a howl to the sounds of crackling flames, crashing branches, and rushing lava. The front of the flow is nearly 20 feet high, and incandescent blocks tumble down its face as it pushes forward. We're hanging out here at the front of the flow, waiting to see if it's going to break out.
1502 July 2nd, Warrior Street.
This surging front isn't very thick, but it's about the fastest I've seen, and it's followed closely by the rest of the flow. This is Bob Decker, scientist in charge of the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. He's chalking the road to see how fast the flow will cover the next 10 meters. Early morning hours are my favorite here at Kilauea vent. The lava looks great, the wind is gentle, and the low-flying helicopters haven't arrived yet. Sulfur dioxide fumes are a constant problem here. Geologist Ken Hahn has just returned from the downwind side of the lake after getting badly fumed while changing film in the time-lapse camera.
I don't much like breathing in the gases, but this is a really great place to work, and you just have to put up with a few minor inconveniences. The overturns moving across the surface towards us are produced by strong convection inside the lake as new lava enters it. This is Shelly Pohoihoi, and it's a real nuisance here. It forms when the lava lake overflows. As you can see, it's very brittle and hollow in the center. When walking in a line, you can never tell who's going to be the one to fall through. Sometimes the leader gets it, but other times a half dozen people can walk over an area before it breaks. I can't think of a worse surface to cross. The broken lava is very sharp, and nasty cuts are inevitable when you fall through. The saying goes around Kupainaha that you either wear gloves or bandages.
It is an incredibly hot afternoon. This is due in part to the fact that we are standing on a slowly moving flow in order to get a good shot of these accretionary lava balls as they come down the channel. It's a pleasant surprise to run into this flow. We're shooting this at full wide angle from about 20 feet. By sitting on a log, I am able to get under the worst of the very intense heat so characteristic of flows. Notice how the sides of the flow solidify into a channel for the fluid center. This is a typical forest scene after a flow has passed close by. It's June 22nd, 1989, and we are in a grove of llama trees just east of the Wahaula Visitor Center. The National Park Service is attempting to prevent flows from overrunning the structure by spraying the oncoming lava with water. The hope is that the water will cool and solidify the flow front, forming a barrier that will divert the main body of the flow. While the water is successful in causing the surface of the lava to skin over, it seems unable to extend its cooling to the flow interior, which readily breaks out once the water is removed. This fire crew is trying to fight a holding action along a 100-foot wide front. The limiting factor is water. The delivery system is simply incapable of pouring enough of it onto the flow to completely and permanently solidify the front. These fire crews are a real credit to the park in their dedication to their job, even in the face of an unrelenting onslaught of lava.
"3:56 p.m. Floor joists have just ignited."
It's interesting being under here with the floor on fire, but I don't think I'm going to stay much longer. It's always been nice to come back here to Wahaula and sit in the shade after a hot afternoon out on the flows. I can already tell I'm going to miss it.
The heat from lava can be extremely intense, and it is easy to get thermal radiation burns on exposed skin. Here Ken Hahn is taking the precaution of wearing a firefighter's suit.
I'm wearing one of these bulky heat suits because I'm going to have to stand right beside this flow for several minutes to measure the temperature as it crusts over. Volcanologists are often seen on television wearing these things, so most people expect us to have them on all the time. We actually use the suits rarely because they're so cumbersome and hard to run in. It's early April 1990, and we're tracking lava flows that are burning through the forest just outside the town of Kalapana. In order to figure out which way the flows are headed, we have to either walk the scorching flow fronts or crash through the flaming jungle just ahead of them. We work early in the morning because just a few hours in the heat and smoke exhausts us completely. The very thing that everyone has been dreading is happening. Lava flows are headed directly into the small town of Kalapana. Christina Helliker, Tari Maddox, and I are on nearly round-the-clock watches as we try to predict the lava's course for civil defense officials. At first, the lava seems to move capriciously, destroying some houses and bypassing others. Large volumes of lava are now entering Kalapana, blocking access and making the evacuation of people's belongings difficult, if not impossible. We are monitoring the temperature of this flow to see if it is the main front or just a minor breakout. The onslaught of lava into the town of Kalapana has begun in earnest by early May. 3 slow-moving pohoihoi flows are cutting a wide swath of destruction through town. Even though our primary work is to provide assistance to civil defense, it is impossible not to become caught up in the human drama that is being played out as people's homes and lives are overrun by lava. Some people choose to pack up everything, even moving entire houses, while others simply walk away and let Pele take what she will. In the aftermath of most natural disasters, like floods, fires, and hurricanes, you can still locate the street you lived on, and rebuilding is usually an option. Not so with lava flows. At Kalapana, houses, possessions, and even memories are permanently buried beneath 50 feet of hardened rock.
It's February 18th, 1992, and this is a new outbreak on the west side of Pu'u'o'o Cone. We got here just a few minutes ago after a 4-hour hike. We are looking down on a line of small dome fountains that are slowly being drowned by flows from above. I got a call from geologist Jack Lockwood about 9 last night. He said that as he drove up to the park, he could see a bright glow out on the East Rift Zone. A few phone calls later, I was able to determine that a significant breakout, which is being called Episode 50, had occurred around dusk. By the time I tried to line up a helicopter, I couldn't find anyone who would fly before 8 a.m., and I wanted to be out here by dawn. Fortunately, I found 3 geologists who were willing to help carry equipment, and we began hiking from the Manu'ulu trailhead around 1 a.m. USGS geologists Maggie Mangan and Christina Helliker are going out to get a lava sample. The trick is to leave it in long enough to get a nice glob of lava, but not so long that the cable becomes stuck to the channel wall. They've picked up 2 good samples so far and are now going to try for a 3rd. This time they seem to have hooked the Big Island. I have the same problem every time I go fishing. We are over on the west side of the flows now. The vent we were just standing beside is in the center of the picture, and the cinder cone towering above is Pu'u'o'o. Although episode 50 lasted only 2 weeks, episode 51 soon started up very nearby. Throughout the whole time, and indeed even during the Kupainaha days, this lava pond inside Pu'u'o'o has been active. It seems to act as a reservoir for lava before it is erupted at the vent. The rim of the pond is frequently falling in, so standing out here is always a trip. The fumes can be really nasty and often contribute to poor visibility. Sometimes we photograph late into the evening and spend the night up here. It's a kind of spooky place. I never sleep very well. This is the lava pond that the current vent drains into. When the pond level is low, the lava pours down the steep falls. That blowing material in the foreground is called Pele's hair. It consists of very thin filaments of volcanic glass that have spun off the frothy surface of the lava and adhered to nearby rocks. We've managed to work ourselves around to where we can see back into the tube. I'm crouched down so as to avoid the worst of the heat. It's so bad out at the very edge that by the time I get the tripod set up, I feel like I'm about to ignite. I think that if I handhold the camera, I may be able to shoot for 30 seconds or so before the heat becomes unbearable. There, now we've got a good view of the entire lava falls. The volume has been increasing over the past few minutes. Now, when the lava hits these boulders, it shoots outward, forming a dome-shaped spray. I'm throwing rocks in to measure the speed of the flow. The foreshortening in this view makes it look like I'm on top of the tube, when in actuality I'm standing just behind it. Brad Lewis and I just woke up to find this event has broken out in full force. Up here on the slopes of Pu'u'o'o, we have a great view down toward this little cone as it tosses glowing balls of spatter into the air. To the left of the cone, another vent has opened up. It is forming a levee in front. I'm very interested in this process, which is why we're down here dodging the spatter and trying to stay out of the yellow clouds of fume as they waft by. I'm working without a tripod because I have to be very mobile. As luck would have it, it seems that when I'm at full wide angle, the spatter falls right on the rim, and when I'm zoomed in tight, it flies out over my head. I recently picked up on using a woodworker's face shield to block the radiant heat. It works great because it covers your whole face, and especially your ears, which always seem to want to catch on fire first. Marty Lockwood and I have been out here less than half an hour, in which time the lake has risen at least 8 feet. I think it's going to begin overflowing shortly. All this brown material on the back side of the vent is Pele's hair. Like the Pelly's hair formed at high lava fountains, it is produced when globs and droplets of molten lava are pulled apart. Thin strands trail out behind the pieces, quickly cool, harden, and drift downwind.
Episode 52 began before dawn on October 3rd, 1992. The vent here is beside these two geologists, on the southwest side of Pu'u'o Cone. From there, the lava cascades down the cone till it hits a ridge where it splashes up into what looks like a small fountain. I'm scrambling up the side of the cone to get a better, but much hotter view. Getting dropped off by helicopter in the midst of an eruption can be a bit dangerous, because it takes a while to figure out just what is going on and where the best escape routes are. Here a large chunk of the channel wall has come adrift. It could have easily blocked the channel, causing a major overflow on my side. This channel is unusually large and fast-moving. Here it is flowing over a small drop and forming a huge standing wave, like the rapids in a big river.
There is always a lot of heat rising above eruptions, making for unstable air and a very bumpy ride. Although I take a lot of aerial footage, I end up using very little of it due to the excessive motion. Still, if I have to film a burning forest, I'd rather do it from the air, where I won't get hit by falling trees or blown up by methane explosions. This flow is coming down a steep slope. Part of it is on an older flow, and part is burning through an ohia forest. It is traveling so quickly that many trees have been completely surrounded without yet catching on fire. This is Kamoamoa. It is a beautiful green oasis with a newly formed black sand beach. Unfortunately, it lies right in the path of the advancing lava. This flow crossed the road here last night, November 7th, 1992, treating these pre-dawn visitors to a dose of smelly smoke from the burning asphalt. The flows are moving with surprising speed, considering the flatness of the topography. They've reached the walls of the heiau, and there is no pause in sight. The wind is really strong here today, and it's driving wildfires through the bushes. It has taken hardly any time at all to fill in this whole enclosure. In a day, the flows have cut straight through the heart of Kamoamoa and are expected to reach the ocean within the hour. Within the past few days, the flows have covered most of Kamoamoa and advanced more than 100 yards seaward. This event was photographed by USGS geologist Tari Maddox. This is one of the things that can happen when seawater gets into a lava tube. The resulting steam explosions blow molten lava hundreds of feet in all directions. These bubbles are huge, on the order of 50 feet in diameter. These bubbles are also formed by the interaction of lava and water. Most are 5 to 10 feet in diameter, though a few are as large as a two-car garage. As they reach their maximum size, they quickly cool and shatter, blowing irregular shards and slightly curved sheets of translucent volcanic glass out into the wind. They are given the name Limu o Pele, which translates to seaweed of Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire. Here the wind is blowing away the steam, revealing a standing wave near the base of the flow. Water splashing onto it becomes incorporated into the lava, producing a stream of bubbles. We were lucky enough to pass in front of this flow just before it went over the sea cliff. I think it's really interesting how the surface crust flexes as it goes over the edge. If you look carefully, you can see Pele's hair sticking to its margins. To me, this looks like some strange reptile skin as it slithers down the cliff. There are many surface flows out here this morning, and as a result, it is exceptionally hot where I'm standing. A fair amount of spatter is also being blown back on shore, contributing to these large steam clouds. When waves wash over the flow, the water doesn't boil off immediately because a steam cushion develops above the lava. Every time a wave comes in, it causes the lava to back up in the channel, often resulting in an overflow. As the overflow rolls up the side, it hardens on the channel wall, building it higher. It reminds me of the coil method of clay pot construction. There was a bench out in front of this littoral cone, but it fell into the ocean a couple days ago. Now the main tube shoots a 2-foot diameter stream of lava straight out into the surf. Huge spatter explosions result from this violent interaction of lava and water. These explosions can begin without warning. Recently, one person was killed and several others very badly burned in separate incidents.
It's early afternoon, and we're flying out to these new breakouts just south of Pu'u'o'o Cone. These 15 to 20 foot high dome fountains are spectacular from anywhere, but only when you get close like this can you easily see them forming. Getting the best footage is clearly a factor of being in the right place at the right time. Staying alive is a factor of not being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There is a fine shifting line between these two, and in a space of only a few seconds or feet, one can unknowingly go from relative safety to extreme danger. Here, all my senses are in a heightened state of perception, and I become acutely aware of even the slightest changes in my environment. When I can't account for a change, I never hesitate to run. Earlier today, USGS geologists detected an increase in shallow earthquakes and an actual physical swelling of the summit of the volcano. Soon the expansion became rapid, and it appeared that a large pulse of magma was entering the volcano. Scientists readied for a possible summit eruption, but after a few hours that activity subsided, and then these fountains broke out. What the volcanologists would really like to know is whether this lava is new material or like the same old stuff that was being erupted before the summit event. Geologist Carl Thornburr is preparing to collect a sample of spatter which will yield this information when it is analyzed for its geochemical and mineralogical composition. geologists Jim Kawahikawa and Jennifer Reynolds are hiking out to the upper end of the vent, where Jim will use a sensitive electronic instrument to determine the amount of lava supplying these dome fountains. Up to now, we've watched geologists collect lava from a channelized flow and from a dome fountain. This is the technique Carl uses to sample from a skylight. Although lava may appear to flow like water, it is much denser. The weighted cable could be ripped from his hands if he doesn't retrieve it aggressively.
It's August 18th, 1996, and I'm lucky enough to be nearby as the lava tube that feeds the bench shatters its solidified crust. The rapidly spreading lava flow covers the bench in minutes. Anyone unwise enough to have ventured down there for a better look would now find themselves trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea. Though sometimes the lava mimics flowing water, many of the other shapes and forms are unique to these cascades of molten rock. I'm climbing down inside this skylight to get a good look at the incandescent tube system. It's rare to be able to see this far inside of a tube. Even though it's incredibly hot down here, it's worth it. From here you can see that the intense heat has remelted the rock on the tube walls, and even the roof has begun to drip.
It's almost dawn on January 30th, 1997, and I am photographing from the west rim of Nepal crater. Last night, scientists at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory reported that large earthquakes and strong tremor were indicating the underground movement of lava in this area. These fountains broke out here about 3 a.m. Now that dawn has arrived, we can see that the west wall of Pu'u'o'o collapsed overnight, giving the cone a decidedly bisected appearance. Fountaining has been tapering off for the past half hour, and I think there's going to be a shutdown here pretty soon.
This 2-kilometer-long fissure just ripped open a little east of this morning's eruption site. We've been out here all day hoping another one would erupt. Fissure eruptions are very rare and short-lived. What an opportunity to see one close up.
The noise is incredible, and the ground's shaking like crazy underneath us.
Some of these fountains are shooting 100 feet into the air. Fortunately, we're standing on the upwind and uphill side of the fissure. It's approaching 3 p.m., and most of the other fountains have shut down, but these are getting more interesting. If you look carefully out there in the middle, you can see ribbon spatter thrown up by the bursting gas bubbles. We're sitting on the backside of Pu'u'o'o, watching 2 active vents spatter below us. Geologist Carl Thornburg is waiting here out of the line of intense heat and fumes to try and snag a sample of spatter. It's pretty hard running through the deep soft cinders on this steep slope, but big spatter bursts are always a powerful incentive.
Brad Lewis, Jenda Johnson, and myself are up on the north rim of Pu'u'o'o, documenting the eruption of this spatter cone that has formed within Pu'u'o'o crater. The activity seems to be cycling between vigorous spattering and gentle effusion. Carl was up here earlier this morning and reported that it was actually fountaining. These cascades of incandescent spatter are so mesmerizing that I have to hold myself back, or I would use up all my videotape and batteries right here. Well, it's a good thing I restrained myself, because it's equally impressive here, about 100 yards from this 50-foot high cone. Although a lot of lava is being thrown out as spatter, the majority is feeding this 12 to 15-foot high flow.
This impressive crater cone that John filmed was short-lived. By the time I saw it, it was almost completely eaten away. Brad Lewis and I are flying in on a late July morning to get a closer look at the activity in Pu'u'o'o. A massive river of lava is welling up in the vent and immediately pouring down into a hole in the crater floor. By the time I get set up on the ground, Brad has climbed to the summit of Pu'u'o'o and the lava lake is filling up. I've joined Brad high on the rim, where we can actually look down into the vent as lava bubbles to the surface and fills the lava lake. We're even happier to be this high up when the lava starts overflowing the lower walls of the crater where I'd just been. These huge drain holes just opened up in the center of the lake. It looks like someone pulled the plug on a giant bathtub. The lake level is dropping very quickly now as a huge volume of lava disappears underground.
This is serious draining now. Seriously draining. It'll come out elsewhere now.
We just turned around in time to see a surge of lava overflowing from this smaller shield to the south of Pu'u'o'o. Cheryl and I just arrived at the coast to find this violent explosive activity in progress. Explosions are tossing spatter and football-sized bombs hundreds of feet in all directions. A large littoral cone is building as red-hot debris piles up on the edge of the cliff. As dusk approaches, these explosions provide a constant fireworks display. Concealed beneath clouds of swirling steam, waves of seawater are rushing into the open tube mouth. The water flashes to steam, sending fragments of lava rocketing skyward. Geologist Dave Sherrod is cautiously approaching the cone to get a better look. Blasts from this cone are extremely unpredictable, and collecting molten samples can be hazardous. Hundred-foot-high spatter explosions dwarf Dave as he works into the night. The bench where lava enters the ocean is beginning to break up and disintegrate right below where I'm standing. Huge chunks are calving into the ocean and exploding at the water's edge. Nearly a third of the active bench is ripped away in a torrent of lava. The collapse carves a canyon 30 feet deep and 100 feet wide. Streams of car-sized bubbles are forming where lava rushes into the ocean. The rest of the bench somehow stays intact, but is still jiggling and looks very unstable. Lava comes bursting out in several places with deafening jetting noises. Pu'u'o'o continues to disintegrate in February 1999 as gaping holes coalesce on its south side. Once towering 1,000 feet over the surrounding terrain, repeated collapses of the summit and lava piling at the base have reduced Pu'u'o'o to half its original height. Just a moment ago, these giant lava bubbles started bursting from the center of the bench. The explosions are rapidly increasing in intensity and begin to bombard the coast with red-hot spatter, forcing everyone to quickly retreat inland. Within 10 minutes, the jets of ash, rock, and steam have grown several hundred feet high. These littoral explosions rain debris, including some very large rocks, well inland of the bench. What an incredible sight! This bench is collapsing just as we fly over it. The eruption paused today, and as the remaining lava drains out, large pieces of the unstable bench cave off and explode. "12 days later, lava begins to rise from deep within Pu'u'o'o, refilling the lava lake and trying to return to its normal path. Downslope, lava is cascading into abandoned skylights and disappearing underground. The skylights fill, overflow, and gradually build a series of perched ponds that begin to feed new flows. Today is December 5th, 1999, and we've got a set of large flows that are bulldozing their way down the eastern side of the flow field. As the fronts pass by, we can see the channels following behind. If these crust over, we may get a brand new tube system developing right here. Since we were out here 2 months ago, most of the lava has been pooling in a huge depression at the base of the slope. Now it is flowing across the coastal plain in hundreds of small flows like this one. That fume back there is coming from the lava tube that is supplying these outbreaks. This is an experiment with time-lapse sequences of sheet flows to study their growth over time. Bulbous toes merge together and form a solid crust. Then the liquid interior pushes the brittle crust upward. The crust cracks, and occasionally the pressurized lava spurts out. In 4 hours, this flow inflated about 5 feet. The inflated front of this sheet flow just burst open. These bubbles are formed by sudden release of pressure. Essentially, water dissolved in the liquid lava is boiling to the surface. These bubbles are forming by a very different process. Vegetation engulfed and burned by the lava releases gases, producing flaming bubbles and noisy jets. The bench collapsed here yesterday. The collapse severed a deep lava tube, creating this beautiful fire hose flow. The lava stream is about 3 feet in diameter and shoots 15 feet straight out from the sea cliff. On top of the poly, a big surge of lava is bursting from the main channel and rushing down the steep terrain. I'm back on the ground now, looking up. I think the surge has reached the base of the slope, but I can't see where it's gone, and it's making me a bit nervous. I heard it before I saw it. The trees above me are exploding into flames as lava floods from the channel. It's moving awfully fast, coming over both sides of the ridge like liquid fire. My first instinct is to grab the camera and run, but instead all I can do is stand and stare. I've never seen lava move like this so far away from the vent. Trees are still standing as the flowing lava pours down in multiple channels. It's one of the most beautiful and eerie sights you can imagine.
Cheryl, Jenda, and I are flying with HVO volcanologists to investigate a large breakout near Pu'u'o that was reported fountaining this morning. Downwind of this dome fountain, the air is searing and laced with sulfur dioxide. Cheryl and I have to wear heat-protective clothing and gas masks to work here. Because there are flows upslope of us, we also have to be alert for new breakouts that can cut off our escape route. Flows near the vent are very fluid and can move extremely fast.
As the steam clears its sunrise, rivulets of lava come into view. Incandescent streams are chilled by the waves and shattered into steaming chunks of black sand, adding to the new beach in front of me. This new land is notoriously unstable. Pieces are breaking off right before my eyes. Larger and more lethal bench collapses are a possibility I always keep in mind. The huge flow that broke out from near Pu'u'o on Mother's Day is quickly moving downslope, burning trees and setting off wildfires. The flow is split into several fingers that are moving down the poly through forest and grasslands. We just stumbled on this impressive flow pouring off an old tumulus. It is engulfing bushes and trees and rapidly advancing on us. The cars and buildings at the end of the road are clearly in the path of this flow, and it's picking up speed. Even though we've been out since 4 a.m., I want to be here when it crosses the road this afternoon or evening. This 3-hour time-lapse sequence shows how fast the lava advances and inflates as it pushes towards the road. The National Park Service is responding to this new threat, evacuating cars and moving signs, cones, and even the lua to a safer location. It's now 7 p.m., and hundreds of visitors are witnessing lava crossing the road for the first time since 1995. Choking fumes from the burning asphalt soon force them to move upwind. The lava is spreading quickly along the road and advancing towards the coast. From high offshore, we can see part of the vast lava field erupted from Pu'uo'o during the past 20 years. This summer's flows covered another several hundred yards of road. Pu'uo'o sits quietly, with little visible lava, but several fumy vents inside and outside the crater. We've come to check out several skylights high up on the tube system. Hidden in the back of this skylight within a hornado is a little cave filled with strange feathery stalactites. When the lava benches get very large, the best and safest views are usually from the air. Many lava streams entering the water peek out from the heavy steam along this bench. It's May 2003, more than 20 years since this eruption began. We're flying in low to check out a large pohoihoi flow moving through dead forest. This area is normally underneath the acid sulfur plume from Pu'uo'o, which long ago killed the vegetation. Our pilot David Okita calls it the bone forest. Clouds of swirling smoke and flames licking along the flow edges make this a very strange and eerie place to be. Pohoihoi flows are slowly moving through, burning up the skeletal ohia trees and burying them in hardened rock. When we first saw cinder like this littering the new flows, we assumed it was debris tossed up by methane blasts. After we watched for a while, we noticed that the slow-moving pohoihoi fronts are actually picking up the spiky cinder, which becomes embedded in the stiff crust and rolled to the top of the flow. The pieces are then frozen in place as the lava advances. Lava is pushing its way over the steep polys just above the coastal flat. Here, an flow tumbles off a cliff, showering clinker down into the bushes around me. In a few minutes, the entire slope is knee-deep in Other flows drop out of sight into deep fault cracks that lace the hillside. Lava flows do strange things when gravity tugs them down these steep slopes. They can be shedding chunks of torn crust one minute and stretching like taffy the next. I'm fascinated by the incredible variety of textures that can be produced by the same type of lava. These variations are caused by small differences in temperature, steepness of the slope, and how much lava is flowing. The vents at Pu'uo'o have rumbled back to life after a long slumber. The spatter cone we're watching formed in the last 24 hours. Eruptions of lava around the base have filled in the deep crater that used to be the West Gap pit. Pu'uo'o is filled to the brim with lava, with at least 6 vents active at the same time.
These eastern cones are putting on quite a show and have built some large spatter chimneys. Lava pouring from the cones is filling up the lava lake. Nearly continuous spatter explosions hurl globs of molten lava, propelled by escaping gases. The lava lake keeps overturning as it fills. New upwelling lava rolls over the thin solid crust, which buckles and is immediately sucked back down into the lake. Two days later, lava is gushing out of the base of a narrow crack on the south side of Pu'u'o Cone. Lava crust forming along the flow edges is peeled and torn as it rolls past. As the lava moves away from the base of Pu'u'o Cone, it spreads out over a wide area. Most of the activity this winter remained near Pu'u'o, well out of the reach of visitors. This lava flow surprised us by how quickly it's come down the Pali after breaking out near Pu'u'o. Adventurous visitors are getting a great view of a lava river. As the A'a flow veers off the new lava, it begins to engulf trees and grass. Park Ranger Jay Robinson checks out the flow front for dangerous methane explosions and keeps the crowd on safer ground. And it's a good thing, too. In slow motion, you can see the ground bounce up about 5 feet during this explosion. For the next few days, lava cascades over Paliuli and begins spreading out on the flat coastal plain below. Pohoihoi flows are oozing and inching steadily toward the ocean. The flows are now pouring over the old sea cliff. Lava snakes its way down the cliff face, folding and twisting into sculpted forms. Lava catching on edges and pulling into strings creates fringes of Pele's hair. Finally, after a 9-month hiatus, lava finds its way back into the ocean and quickly builds a new bench. Tonight, visitors are getting a rare show and a good idea of why the area is roped off, as pieces of the active bench collapse into the sea. We've seen some good-sized explosions generated, even by these small collapses. We've been sitting here for a while, watching a very slow A'a flow, when we noticed some lava leaking from the levee. Moments later, the entire side of the channel collapses, sending a torrent of lava downslope. All this incredibly fluid lava was dammed up behind the A'a front. Large chunks of channel wall are tumbling in the flow as it pours downslope. Persistent leaks from the main tube have been producing multiple flows on the Pali for much of the summer. It's a great place to see Pohoihoi and A'a form side by side. Initially, a Pohoihoi flow rolls down the steep slope. As the lava cools, it tears into slabs and then into spiny clots. Eventually, the entire flow starts to crumble like a cookie as it changes to A'a. The eruption is back in full swing this fall, with flows alternating between the vent, the Pali, and the ocean.